Hello, my name is Jose Villarreal,
And I'm Rolando Escamilla.
and this is our presentation on warehouse risk analysis and economic alternatives. This is our table of contents where we will discuss project proposal, elements identification, data collection, and McAllen, Bronzeville, and Laredo warehouse cost analysis, sensitivity analysis, and our sensitivity analysis best action, and our reference page. Our project proposal. Metro PCS is a subsidiary of T-Mobile Distribution Products and charges storage fees for such products. As franchisees of Metro PCS, we're looking to expand our own product line and need to find locations suitable to store and distribute our products and cut off dependence on T-Mobile distributors and their escalating distribution and storage fees. In order to do so, we have identified 3 locations where our proposal would allow us to save the company money by buying a warehouse in one of these 3 locations: McAllen, Bronzeville, Laredo, all located in Texas.
The problem is we need a location that maximizes the amount of savings over a time period of 11 years. To combat this, we're going to perform a cost analysis where we analyze the investment required, the minimum annual rate of return, the marginal annual rate of return, tax, inflation, and the bonus in the 3 different locations mentioned with a buy or lease option, while also analyzing the proximity of each warehouse to other Metro PCS locations. Ultimately, we're going to choose the option with the greatest savings and the lowest cost. With each buy or lease option for each of the 3 locations, we're going to come out to a total of 6 different options that we're going to be analyzing.
Our element identification. The decision for the location of proposed warehouses will be based off cost effectiveness of the outcome of our cost analysis. We will compare 3 possible locations for the proposed warehouse relative to the location of existing warehouses that are for lease near the border and hub cities, and do a cost comparison analysis of what it will cost the business to buy versus lease. The decision objective is to lower the cost of spending for our business by reducing the cost of transportation between business locations and warehouses, as well as save on cost of storage of finished goods. The proposed locations for the new warehouses in McAllen, Bronzeville, and Laredo. The outcome of determining the best alternative from the 3 locations will be saving the business and will save on transportation and storage between 27 store locations scattered across these 3 cities. We will analyze the risk of buying versus leasing, the rate of risk, the facility location to provide cost analysis of each type of option at each location. The benefit of such analysis will provide a better decision-making tool in our investment. Our analysis will help identify areas and cities that benefit more from savings, taking into account the amount of store locations in that city. This will help compound the savings from either buying a warehouse or leasing a warehouse in that area and taking into consideration different aspects. The green bars represent the cost of buying in each of these proposed cities, and the red bar column represents the cost of lease per annum in that city.
All right, here we have our data collection, and in the first table, table 1.2, we have the transportation and storage cost versus savings. If we stick with our current distributor T-Mobile, we're going to end up with a $36,000 distribution cost. However, if we choose to do our own distribution, we're going to see an estimated total savings of around 50% as indicated here. And these numbers are directly influenced by the amount of locations of Metro PCSs within the warehouse location area. So basically, the more locations that there are, the greater savings that we will experience. Over here in table 2.1, we have the savings and cost of buying with inflation taken into account. We're also going to take into account the tax cut issued out in 2020, as well as an 80% depreciation in year 1. This is over an 11-year lifespan with a MAR of 12% and an investment of $200,000. So here we see the MACRS, which determines the rate of depreciation. And in the end of the lifespan, it'll add up to 1. Once that happens, the value of the warehouse will come out to $0 in the end. Here you can see the MACRS affects the depreciation. And then we're going to have a savings, which is directly affected by the annual operating and maintenance which is here in the cost. The table continues on to the next slide, where we have the after-tax cash flow, which is however much money we have left calculated after taxes, as well as the present value factor, which is a result of the tax, depreciation, savings, cost, and is used in calculating the present value when we multiply the present value factor by the after-tax cash flow. When we calculate the present value for each year and add them up, we end up with a net present value of negative 45,000 for the buy option in the McAllen warehouse. Here in table 2.3, we have the lease option in McAllen with a $20,000 annual fee. Here we use the present value factor, and ultimately we end up with a net present value of around negative 60,000. So here for the McAllen location, buying would be the best option.
This is figure A, the McAllen warehouse. It's a 12,000 square foot warehouse in McAllen in close proximity to an airport, within 3 miles from the border and right next to an expressway. It does have access to loading and distributing docks, and it's a good warehouse for that location. Here we have the cost analysis for the Bronzeville warehouse, the buy scenario. The investment of $185,000 is the cost of the warehouse. The savings as depicted in table 1.2 of $27,640 projected. The cost is $5,000 per annum in maintenance cost. The salvage value at the end of the MACRS life would be $20,000 with a marginal annual rate of return of 12. And a tax rate of 24%, which is based off of the IRS.gov for the year 2020. And we are including inflation determined to be at 3% with a bonus depreciation of 80% for bonus depreciation, which is depreciated within the first year. So these table 3.1 represents the cost analysis of the savings minus the cost. Times the 1 minus the tax rate, and we calculate the present value factor using 1 divided by 1 plus MARR raised to the number of years, used from the engineering economics book that we've been using. We come up with a present value factor, or with the summation of the present value factor over the 11-year lifespan comes out to about negative 22,763. At the lease option, we have the lease payment for this proposed location at $15,000 with the present value factor calculated using the MARR and the summation giving us the net present value of negative 46,870. Now, when net present value is negative, closest to 0 is the most effective, because if the worth of the cost is higher than the net present value, such as taxes and MARR, or the cost to save money, net present value this would represent an investable option. And this is a Bronzeville warehouse. I believe it's about 11,000 square feet with access to docking and distributing ramp in close proximity to an expressway, about 4 miles from the border.
All right, here we have our Laredo warehouse with an investment of $210,000, cost of $5,000 per year, salvage value of $20,000, AMAR 12%, a tax rate of 24% as issued in 2020, and an inflation rate of 3%, and a bonus of 80% indicated in year 1. So again, we have the MACRS, which will directly affect our depreciation rate. And at the end of the 11 years, the value of the warehouse will be 0. And then continuing on, we have our after-tax cash flows multiplied by our present value factor to end up with our present value for each year. In the end, for this table right here, this is going to be the buy option. We're going to end up with a net present value of around negative 59,000.
So this lease option here for that specific location in Laredo is $18,000 per annum. Calculated NPV is negative 56,244. For this specific scenario at this location, the best option would be to lease, as the net present value is closer to zero than the buy option. We do have to represent that the Laredo location only represents or only has 4 store locations within that surrounding area. So transportation costs would increase delivering products to the McAllen and Bronzeville area, as they are a little length of ways. And this is the Laredo warehouse. It's about 9,000 square feet, a little smaller, but it does have 2 separate warehouses. One can be used for distribution and one can be used for storage.
And here we have our economic tree, which is essentially something easier on the eyes. It's a more of a visual representation of the choices laid out upon us based on the calculations that we performed for the buy or lease options. And from here, we would go down each branch for each location and choose the best options, which we did indicate in the tree and in our presentation. As you can see here, we have good options and bad options for each location.
So the economic tree for the purchase and lease of a new warehouse, one must take into consideration the location of the new storage facility, the location of the warehouse, if it will directly affect the total cost of storage and transportation, as it will be a major factor in the purchase cost of the actual warehouse, taking into consideration varying prices of the warehouse in different regions in the state of Texas. Not only will it simply affect the storage costs, the location will also affect the transportation costs, because the further the plant is from each individual store location, the more transportation will cost. So this is, like Roland said, just a visual representation of what led us to the best course of action to represent the thought process and decision making. This is a good decision making tool when it comes to deciding different factors and what to take into consideration. So this sensitivity analysis, in conclusion, the alternative to buy or lease in this location is determined by net present value, reflected by the buy or lease cost analysis. Buying a warehouse would be the best action in cities like McAllen and Bronzeville, but in Laredo, the best action would be to take a lease a warehouse, as the net present value is closer to zero in leasing a warehouse, and in that scenario, leasing a warehouse is the best option versus buying. But the best alternative overall is purchasing a warehouse in Bronzeville, as Bronzeville has 13 store locations within its proximity, and transportation costs using a weighted factor of 1/100 for each store can represent even more savings in transportation. This is our reference page. We used Engineering Economics 13th edition, the book that we've been using for class. And we also reference irs.gov for the 2020 tax brackets and corporate tax and small business tax for our presentation. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed our presentation.
Thank you.